Number 9. Man's best friend. If you thought John Wick was the greatest dog defender known to man, then check this guy out. A man who risked everything to make sure his dog would outlive the entirety of the world's population. In December 2021, Florida man Philip Joseph was so hell-bent on finding out whether he could, he didn't stop to think if he should. According to him, he loved his dog so much he couldn't let it die. Any dog lover can understand where he's coming from. After all dog owners would love it if their four-legged friends turned immortal and never left their sides. Philip knew he didn't have any magic powers of Frankenstein knowledge to pull it off. So, he went ahead and kidnapped Ryan Lockhart, a doctor and scientist from the University of South Florida, to make his dog immortal. That said, it was obviously never going to work because no secret formula or lab can make a dog live forever, at least none that we know of. At that point, Philip was just a crazy guy holding a scientist hostage. Thankfully, before he did something actually radical like sacrificing the scientist to summon the devil, the police found them. Ryan's family had notified the authorities when he went missing. They got to the scene and arrested Philip on the spot. In the end, no charges were filed against him because can you really blame him for wanting his dog to live forever? We sure can't. Besides, the story went viral on social media and everyone had a good laugh. While talking about his reasoning in an interview, Philip said he just got anxious when he thought about the fact that his dog's going to die someday. Number 8. Make yourself at home. In September 2021, a burglar broke into an Ohio woman's home. Except he really didn't steal anything of value, except maybe the homeowner's peace of mind. Apparently, he was pretty tired of robbing that night. He was found napping in the guest bedroom of the house he broke into, in true Goldilocks fashion. Stacy Stedman, who lives with her husband, son, and brother-in-law in her family home in Canton, wasn't expecting to get the shock of her life that day. When Stacy woke up in the morning, she noticed that a light was on in the spare room. When she went to see why, she found the not-so-smooth criminal asleep in the bed. She woke her brother-in-law, who eventually ran the intruder out of the house. After the intruder fled the scene, Stacy discovered the man's wet trousers next to the pool. Not only did he take a nap, he went for a swim. Plus, he also ate all the leftover chicken from the previous night's dinner. He was so comfortable that he even lit a candle in the bathroom for a full luxury resort experience. Oh, and before leaving, the weirdo also swiped a pair of her son's underwear. It remains unclear how the man got into the home. Stacy's husband had noticed the guy walking shirtless in the street before he left for work at 4 a.m. He said he waited until he could no longer see the weirdo before driving off. He didn't think the guy was going to break into his house. Thankfully, it didn't take long for the police to track him down and arrest him. He was slapped with a burglary charge. Still, for him, a night of luxury might have been worth all the trouble. Number 7. Bad angle. In July 2019, a woman from Louisiana wanted for second-degree murder was apparently unhappy with the photo officials posted on social media to help bring her into custody, and she decided to vent. Apparently, the police had been looking for Precious Landry for quite some time, so much so that they even posted a picture of her online, asking people for assistance. There was even an award being offered of $1,000 to anyone who tipped them off. Precious was a wanted woman, but she did not want an ugly picture of her being used to help bring her to justice. When she saw the unflattering photo of herself posted on Facebook, she decided to vent. She commented on her own mugshot saying, "That picture ugly." Funnily enough, the St. Martin's Crime Stoppers page decided to respond to her comment and said she was always welcome to head over to the sheriff's office to take a new picture. Or alternatively, someone else could just turn her in and collect the $1,000 reward. Well, turns out she really didn't like her first mugshot because a couple of days later, the post was updated to say that Precious had turned herself into law enforcement. That being said, we just hope she got a better mugshot out of the whole thing this time around. Number 6. LEGOLAND driver. In March 2022, a driver in the UK was arrested for reckless driving after leading the police on a wild car chase. When they asked him to show his driving license, he showed them what turned out to be the most ridiculous thing ever. The whole thing began when officers attempted to pull over a dangerous Audi A7 driver. who'd been whipping his car about near the Bexley area. Rather than complying, though, the driver decided to channel his inner Dominic Toretto instead. The man led police on a 35-mile chase that took them all the way from southeast London to Kent. In fact, it got so wild that the officers were forced to call in a police helicopter to help with the pursuit. Eventually, they did catch him after he ran out of gas. Officers found a pretty big stash of marijuana in his car too. Of course, at this point, he was busted. So when officers asked him to produce his driving license, he showed them a 2003 LEGOLAND driving school license instead. Now, if you don't already know, this is awarded to kids who pass the theme park's driving test by going through a bunch of Lego traffic lights, roundabouts, and a speed camera. Also, yes, it did have the officers in stitches. Once the laughing was over, though, they put the dude in handcuffs and charged him with a bunch of stuff. Number 5. Double down. They say that lightning doesn't strike the same place twice, but this California bank robber decided to put this theory to the test by robbing the same bank 2 days in a row. 33-year-old Samuel Brown first appeared at a Chase Bank in Fountain Valley, San Diego. It was your average Monday afternoon bank robbery. The guy slipped a note to the teller demanding cash. Usually, it doesn't take much to catch suspects like this, but Brown was lucky enough to escape with a pretty hefty amount of cash. Maybe he thought he had some bank robbing superpowers, because for some reason, he decided it'd be a good idea to return to the same bank the next morning and rob it again. After all, if he got so much cash the first time without any issues, what's the harm in doubling down? Well, as it turns out, there's a lot of harm, as the cops were already on high alert and arrested him pretty much right away. Gotta say though, the saying about criminals always returning to the scene of the crime might actually be true. If Brown hadn't been greedy, and let's face it, dumb, he could have gotten away with it. He was charged with robbery and put in the Orange County Jail on a $170,000 bail. Number 4. Call of Duty. In January 2021, an escaped British inmate was busted again just because he ventured outside during COVID lockdown to buy the latest Call of Duty game. 36-year-old Chris Butler had escaped from jail back in November 2020 and had eluded the police for a couple of months. Plus, with the lockdown and everything, it was already hard for them to track him down. That said, the temptation of the new Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War was a bit too much for him, and he had to get it to scratch his itch. So rather than buying it online as any normal person would, he decided to step outside. Now, of course, a normal dude walking to a video game store to buy something isn't inherently suspicious. But for Chris, he simply looked suspicious enough for the police to stop him. The officer asked Chris and the friend that was with him what they were doing outside during the lockdown. Their answer? They just wanted to get the game. Not only were they on the streets when they should have been inside, they also had marijuana on them and gave the cops fake names. When the officer said they were going to run their information, Chris attacked them. He started throwing kicks and punches. Perhaps he mistook his reality for the video game. He was arrested on the spot and sent back to prison. He also got an extra 2 years added to his sentence for breaking out of jail and attacking the officers. We're sure his Xbox Live friends are wondering where he went after promising a Call of Duty session though. Number 3. BIRDMAN. In April 2021, a man from Guyana tried to bring some extra passengers on the flight with him by hiding them in hair rollers. The 26-year-old smuggler was trying to take a bunch of critters with him all the way to New York City, giving a whole new meaning to the term flying cheap. Unfortunately for him though, he couldn't quite stay under the radar as authorities arrested him as he landed at JFK Airport. He would have probably gotten away with it if it weren't for those pesky little birds chirping away in there. The guy trapped finches in a bunch of hair rollers, which by the way, have become a pretty prolific thing for people to smuggle stuff in. In fact, in March 2021, Indian smugglers were caught taking contraband in hair rollers as well, except that in their case, it was gold rather than birds. Still, trafficking birds isn't exactly a noble cause. In 2015, something similar led to millions of chickens and turkeys dying of avian flu. Also, the guy wasn't even original in his plan because someone had already been caught a couple of years back trying to do the same thing at the same airport. So perhaps it was time to switch up strategies for this attempt. Regardless, he was arrested on the spot, but was let go with a $300 fine. Number 2. Edward Scissorhands. Gardeners. They're old news because this mystery Texas guy took it upon himself to give the neighborhood trees a good old trim, even if no one wanted him to do it. And now, they all want to nip this vandal in the bud. Appropriately called Edward Scissorhands by the people in the area, the guy lurks like a shadow in the night and fights his arch nemesis, tree branches. Yep, apparently he's been seen snipping branches off residents' trees late at night in Fort Worth. He's pretty good too because he's managed to shave off over a dozen trees in the area. Not to mention, his methods truly stump the mind as there's not really any logic to them. Sometimes he's satisfied with just a single branch, while other times, when he's really riled up, he takes an entire load of branches off, just to teach those trees some kind of a lesson. The chaos doesn't stop there either. According to the camera footage from October 2022, the tree-cutting bandit only shows up at around 3 a.m. with a leashed dog. Now perhaps he's just collecting sticks for his pets at home. Who really knows? The people, however, just want him to leave their trees alone. In fact, he has sort of become an urban legend in the area, as sometimes people would wake up and think there was a storm or something. But then it finally dawned on them. Of course that's no storm. Only Edward Scissorhands could have trimmed down a tree with such surgical precision. And until the police used the surveillance footage to get their hands on him, it seems like no trees are safe from his wrath. Number 1. Face Off. Bank robbers typically have a plan for the money they steal, and usually it's pretty normal stuff, like paying off a debt or buying fun toys like boats and fancy cars. However, in May 2019, a woman from Alabama had different plans for her heist money. 39-year-old Iconic Face perhaps took the phrase, "put your money where your mouth is," a bit too literally, as she strolled into Bancorp South in Gulfport, Mississippi, and tried to rob the place to pay for her plastic surgery. She walked up to the teller window and handed the clerk a handwritten note that read, "You've got a minute to give the money, don't be wrong, or die." Curiously enough, she didn't draw a weapon or anything. The teller noticed she had a swollen face, almost as if she'd recently undergone a cosmetic operation. Of course, if walking into a bank and stealing cash was so easy, everyone would be doing it. Iconic ultimately failed to disguise herself. The police were alerted by a hidden alarm. She was also caught in the act via the surveillance cameras as well. Not to mention, she had a very unique face due to her cosmetic procedures. So, fast forward through some investigation, and she was caught at an airport a week later when she returned from Mexico. What's more, the surgical tape on her face in the mugshots probably meant that she'd received her heist-funded procedure in Mexico. That being said, this wasn't even her first rodeo. In 2009, she was caught robbing another bank and had to spend 51 months in federal prison for it. As a matter of fact, that's when she changed her name from Jimmy Maurice Lewis II to Iconic Face. And now, while the bandages are off, the charges are, of course, sticking. Thanks for watching. What's the dumbest thing you've gotten in trouble with the law for? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.